Hello and welcome to the Garden Log with me, Ben Dark. I am a gardener and today I am outside. This is the Garden Log's first ever on-location broadcast. I've come to the Bernstorff Slotshave, a park in Gentofte, just north of the centre of Copenhagen, to do a little walk around the kitchen gardens and the orchards. These are 19th century additions to a much older garden, to an 18th century garden. And the rest of the park's been put over to more of the English landscape school, undulating hills and gullies, which is rare for Copenhagen, which is a flat sandbank from what I can tell. Anyway, that's where I came, and that's the recording I planned to make today. Unfortunately, I have known this place solely as a region of perfectly neglected longish grass and beautifully cared for plants. And today it is getting its autumn haircut. It's getting the first lawnmower cut in many weeks. There's a chap out there driving this fantastic machine. He's got one of those John Deere ride-ons where you don't have the big engine block. It's not like a miniaturized tractor. It's one of the big mowing decks with a seat almost on the top, and you steer it by levers like a JCB. You can pirouette on nothing. So it would make a very good addition to a lawnmower dancing squad. He has driven me away from my intended location, and so I have come out into the landscape park to see what there is to talk about out here. The other audio distraction that we're going to be coping with is these poor startled wood pigeons that I keep surprising while they're having their lunch. It's mid-October here and the beech mast has fallen, so all of the birds are having a wonderful time down in the crinkly crankly leaves, and I occasionally come around a corner and the poor things take off with a great big flapping racket. In Hackney we used to live in a tiny little flat by the Chinese restaurant, and above the Chinese restaurant, directly outside our window, was a huge slum housing project for pigeons, and the noise their wings make is something incredible. It's enough to give me nightmares, even in a peaceful park like this one. They are a flashback to different times in a different city a long time away. Nice little dog. Come past me there, you might have heard a tinkling on the bell. It's quite a big dog walking park. Anyway, out here in the woods, I am looking at this wonderful edgeland species of berry-producing plants. They've got a good amount of Rosa floribunda with those nice, perfectly spherical red rose hips. Not quite as exciting as the great big squid-shaped ones that you get on some species of roses, but still attractive. And then next to them, hello, the dog's back, hello. Off he goes again. And next to them, they have Viburnum opulus, which is that almost autumn-defying, shining, bright red berry you've seen. The one that looks like it's absolutely too thin-skinned to keep in the quantity of juice. It glows if there's even 5% daylight out in the sky. It's a marvellous plant. And then next to that, they have the European spindle, the euonymus europaea, which is another very exciting plant to see, because that's the one with the uncanny pink fruits and absolutely perfectly clashing red seeds that flower about this time of year. It's really interesting actually, because it's a major host for some of the agricultural parasites, for the black bean aphid. And there is a large educational garden here. I think there's a project where they teach children about how their food gets from that mud into their stomachs. And in that project, I can see the relics of various bits of beans, and I wonder if they know that they are harbouring next year's decimators in the spindle tree. There aren't any around me at the moment, but I popped over to some in more of the lawnmower sounding territory. And the little aphids have just started to land on the tips of the leaves. They land on the tips of the leaves in about now, and then they start making their little aphidy way down the leaf, laying eggs, and then they get to the leaf scars from the old leaves on the stems and lay more there. Then they get to the old wood, and they lay some in the 2-year-old wood, and they will lay some in the 3-year-old wood, and then they reach the 4-year-old wood, and by that time you don't find any more because they've run out of eggs. That's the aphid egg laying story, and it's just beginning over there now, just beginning at the end of the leaves. Apparently the seeds are very poisonous in the euonymus fruit, the orange bits, but the flesh is incredibly highly nutritious. It's the paleo diet, the Atkins diet berry of choice. Well, actually, I don't think it is. I don't think anyone eats it, but it should be. If you're a bird on a diet, if you're a bird who wants to get lean muscle, to get hench for winter, then you should eat that, because it's got a vastly high lipid content and a very low carb content, lipids being the organic fats. So all of those robins and blackbirds that are munching on it are going to find themselves breaking personal bests in the gym in a few weeks' time. Apparently the tits who eat it, I saw some tits on it earlier, don't do any good for the euonymus. They just eat the fruit and leave the seeds to fall where they were, which must make the plant think, well, what's the point of doing all this fruit production? I could have just dropped the seeds wherever I wanted. Anyway, there's another little dog here. Oh, this one's got a good coating of mud. It's found some deep, dank patch to get in there. That's what we like to see. I'm just going to wait for this plane to go over. Just walking around a little circular copse, very, very English landscape style. It's been plonked down on the top of a hill here, and it's just starting to turn into its autumn colours. It's largely sycamore, which does a good job here, I think, in the extra cold. It's colouring quite nicely in its buttering times. And then there's quite a lot of crataegus, of hawthorn here, gone past the bright red stage into the dark Christmas lipstick. I'm at the Christmas party scene in a 90s film, and I'm going to make my lips look like plum pudding colour. It's not very much eaten either. Apparently the euonymus fruit and the hawthorn fruit are the ones that survive the longest on the ground if you scatter them on the ground. The little ground mammals, all those voles and co, don't go for them. This is the crisp crunch of some sycamore leaves. The sycamore's got lots of keys on it still waiting to fall down there. I'm trying to see what else they've got in this little circular encampment. Here we go, we can break through the walls, go and see the inside. I do like these little circular pockets of scrubby wood, but I think that what this place needs is a couple of big triumphant trees, big trunk worshipping trees, something where you can see the real power and muscle of the bunched wood, not just the fluttery, flickery little leaves of these copses, because English landscape gardens, they're about views, they're about things seen from the distance, and these little lumps can look somewhat similar. What we need is a massive, blasted, half-dead oak or a big ash standing out here. The ash looks in better nick here, but actually no, I'm looking up at some towards the old house now, and I can see that there is some dieback at the top, so maybe we've got old ash dieback disease here as well. That would be a pity. Anyway, I probably should fill you in on what's been going on with me and with the garden log over the past few months. As you'll know, there was the big move to Denmark, and then, joy of joy, I managed to finish the long talked about masters, the investigation into Lieutenant Colonel J.J. Sexby and the Victorian Public Park. And it came down after 3 years to the very last afternoon of the last day, checking through the footnotes with my son sent home from nursery just at the last minute, as almost the final flourish, the final twist in a disaster movie. Just when you think everything's safe, then the real last boss comes around the corner, and it's a sick child who does not want to sit on your lap while you make sure that all the commas are in the right position, and if you have cited your archival sources properly. But anyway, it's in, and I managed to get in my favourite anecdote from garden history, the one I discovered some years ago in the London Metropolitan Archives about Cochrane, the tyrannical Finsbury Park gardener who had set up a vigilante squad to go around tarring and feathering the private parts of people he regarded as indecent in the park. So hopefully that will give the examiners something to smile at least. It must be a very dry old business going through 15,000 word garden history postgraduate dissertations. But anyway, we all have our crosses to carry, don't we? So that's done. And even more exciting news, I have finished writing a book for a publisher. I don't know when I start talking about it, when I start doing the big publicity drive, but it's about front gardens near where I lived in southeast London, about the sites that I saw as I was walking along a fairly ordinary road for a year, taking my son off to nursery, and the strange and complicated histories that are found within the ordinary plants is going to be out next April in a hardback edition with these glorious illustrations by a very talented illustrator. And I will let you know, of course, when it becomes available for pre-order. And it means that now I have freedom of time for the first time in a very, very long time. I don't have a 5-hour commute. I don't have a book deadline to secretly hit. I don't have a master's to finish. I just have gardens to visit and talk about. My only worries in the world are men with lawnmowers. So hopefully you'll be hearing a bit more from me. In terms of actual gardening, I haven't done a great deal since getting here, which has been something of a relief. I've had a solid run of years of gardening, and I don't think you can get PTSD from leaf raking, but I do occasionally still open the curtains and wince at the amount of leaf, and then realise, but I won't be starting a leaf blower today. It's not a problem. I don't have to make a lawn look as if it were pristine and no tree ever grew around it. So that's quite a pleasant experience. I've done a little bit of work in our garden here, just trying to combat the sea of Japanese anemones, some of my very favourite plants, but they are unbelievably happy in this garden. They seem to like this northern climate and the sandy soil on which we sit. So I girded my loins and thought, right, I'm going to have to do something about this. I'm going to have to thin some just so that we can grow something else in the future. And I managed to locate some pretty heavy-duty forks, one of those forks that looks like it's been beaten out of some piece of agricultural machinery. and got myself a cup of tea, steeled myself for some real work, and slid the fork in, and it was like pulling a strand of spaghetti from a jar of grated Parmesan cheese, popped up as if it was nothing, with a little bit of cheesy sand stuck to it, which I was able to shake off, and I was able to lift roots a metre long, anemone roots that run sideways without diverting for a metre, and just came floating out of the sandy soil. And I realised that my entire gardening career, something that seems to have gone on, to me at least, for a very long time, has been conducted on London clay or Chiltern clay. And I have never worked on this ex-seashell, sandy seaside stuff. And it's going to be a very, very, very different experience. One that I'm greatly looking forward to. Going back into the woods now. I've been out in a little bit of a field zone, hence being able to see those big lumps there. I'm crossing a little ditch here, good and muddy in the bottom. Some of the dogs will be in there later. And now you can hear the crisp crunch of the leaves on the ground. See if we can go and disturb some pigeons out here. This is a little clearing full of very good, well-grown, straight beech trees. Probably about 20 metres from each other, standing at perfect fill the height, grow straight up distance, but not quite grotesque enough for my liking. I like my trees a little bit more whorled and gnarled and bulging out, a little bit more raw power in them. All right, here we're getting to the highest bit of this particular woodland, and I can see that the very tallest beech tree there, the thickest trunk, has been blown apart at some point. It doesn't look like lightning. It looks like it just had the wind blow the top off it. It's got a hollow trunk, and there's some little birds hopping around, going in there. I can't see if they've left the top on the ground. They might be able to tell me a little bit more about when it fell down. Not very, very long ago, I don't think, because it's not started shooting itself up a new lead. Oh, well, it has a little bit. Probably lost it a good decade ago. Still hanging on, which I'm glad to see. Well, this one isn't. The very dead old tree here. It's been a bit of a heave. It's pulled itself half out of the ground and then been whooshed away many years ago. Oh, there's a good... Here we go, there's a good shelter here. A good den. A Danish built lean-to. I'm going to go over and see if there's any difference in construction styles from the English one. I went to a talk once about the existence of Bigfoot at one of the London cryptid societies, one of the London imaginary beast societies. We all sat in a pub. Hello. It's a nice dog. I wish I knew the breeds of dogs. I could tell you what it was. There, and they postulated that could these shelters we see in the woods be the home of the Bigfoot? Like all these things, if you have to ask a rhetorical question, you know the answer is no, of course it couldn't, but it's nice to think so. And it certainly has added to my enjoyment of country walks, to be able to think, well, maybe Bigfoot does live there. It's these little aggregations of experience that make these things enjoyable. I must have done something of a circle because I can hear the man's droning lawnmower getting louder. Ah, there's a little gate here. A little crossbar gate. It's very inviting. And perfectly cut hedges around it. This is very, very good gardening. So you come from the wilds of the woodland. There are fallen logs uncleared everywhere, scrubby bits of tree. I can see some brambly morass over there. It's an excellent giant oak here doing all of that hulking presence that I asked for earlier. And then a gate in a perfectly square cut beech hedge could have been set down with a laser level, and then beyond that 2 sloping sides of box, looks like large leaf box, that look like the sloping roof of a shallow pitched house on both sides going up away from the path. And it's the perfect combination of wild and formal together that we're always striving for. I was thinking about this the other day when I was looking at the cosmos flowers on our dining room table. Just going to open this gate here. When I was looking at the cosmos flowers on our dining room table, they were long cut stems, and all of the heads were wiggling and wonkling out sideways in glorious directions, in contrast to this perfectly geometrical piece of glassware underneath them, this creature of smooth sides and straight lines. And I thought just how nice it was. It would be awful if the vase was equally as hairy, but likewise it would be disappointing if the collection of flowers on top were similarly domed and lovely, like those old-fashioned rose displays that you used to get in the foyers of London hotels, where it could be a beach ball with a rose pattern printed on it, rather than anything with a bit of life and vigour. I think that's why ranunculus are my favourite cut flower. Ranunculus cut long and allowed to go wiggling serpent-like after death to blaze these up and down twisting patterns and scatter petals randomly on the table. They paint a picture of life continuing even while they're sitting in their mortuary vase. And that little scene there combined those two thrills. I'm going to go and try and take a picture of it so that I can release it with this episode. Anyway, let me go up between these 2 hedges. Now, there's a little thatch cottage above, but I think that marks the entrance to the kitchen garden, which I would really like to spend more time talking about. So maybe we'll save that for next week's episode. Oh gosh, there's some great big fat tubs of agapanthus coming up. Agapanthus grown the best way, completely rammed into terracotta until there's no space for soil whatsoever. Yes, here we go. This is the top of a little formal garden, a little tea house garden that leads into the area I'm going to talk about next week. Okay, well, a bit of a shorter episode, I'm sorry to say, but don't blame me, blame the tractor man. I'm hoping that I will be able to get out an episode every week or so for the next few months. And if this one works, then some of them will probably be out on location. Oh look, there's a big old yew tree here. One of those yew trees that builds a house for itself. You can go inside and sit on the stems. It's touching the ground at all points around it. More berries as well to go on the berry theme for the episode. You can eat the outside bit of a yew berry, that sweet sugary bit. It's the stone that's poisonous, but it's not really worth doing. It's very mucilaginous and not particularly special, not particularly crisp or or tart or anything. Just seeing if this is a single tree, or it's a relic of something bigger, something outgrown. I wonder if this was a topiary blob or something. Yes, there's quite a few of them. I'm going to go inside. This used to be a Baroque style garden. It's gone through various iterations. And I wonder if this is a relic of some topiary, because there are probably 1, 2, 3, 4 ancient yews, probably 6 of them. They're standing around in no particular relationship to each other. They're not in a line. It's not an outgrown hedge like you sometimes see. But they mostly split heavily quite low down, which I think implies that they once knew the touch of a gardener's shears, and then each of them has developed a leader, probably a few foot up from the ground. They've escaped when the park fell into dereliction, got taken away from the monarchs and given to the people, those lazy, layabout, can't be bothered to look after things people. They were allowed to turn into this magnificent, outgrown palace in which I now stand. Someone's dragged a picnic table under here. This would be quite a good place if you were a teenager looking to hide away and do what teenagers do. There's a great big polished tree here. Wow, this has been climbed and sat on an awful lot. It's smooth as one of those statues you find in a Catholic church, one of those places of pilgrimage statues. It's very, very lovely. You'd want that as your banister. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm just rubbing a tree, as one does. Anyway, enough of that. I hope that you are all enjoying the start of autumn, if it is autumn for you, or the start of spring, if it is spring for you, or that equatorial middle of nothing sense of, is time even passing, if you're living somewhere on the equator. I sympathise. That's one of the things I found hardest, was missing the seasons. I think that Denmark, if anything, is going to be even more seasonal. So look forward to hearing a lot about that, a lot about the vitamin D supplementation and the where is the sunshine lamentations. Anyway, until then, thank you very much for listening. I'll come back next week to hear about the kitchen garden. Thank you very much, and goodbye.